Hello everybody, welcome to Funhouse. Got a very special video series coming in today that I'm very excited to do. I've put some work into this one, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. As you can see, I have created a bracket of Hugo nominees since 2014, and that got me 63 nominees since 2014, including the winners. Oh, knocked over something, sorry for the noise. Including the winners, and put them in a bracket. As you can see, our one seed, which we'll explain the seeding in a minute, got automatically advanced to the second round. The other books are matched up. So if we just kind of look, we can see, and Lecky won in 2014, and we got books like Neptune's Brood, Parasite, Warbound, The Wheel of Time, Three Body Problem. You can see that the Ancillary series has won a bunch. You'll see some multiple books from a series on the list. You can see Ancillary Justice, Ancillary Sword, Ancillary Mercy. Lots of series have multiple entries on this list. And the way this is going to go, I have not read all these books. I wish I had, but I haven't. So what I'm going to do is actually a bracket of which of these books I'm the most interested in reading, with the caveat that I've read some of the books. So if there's a book that I've read that I really like in one of these years, and it's matched up against a book that I haven't read, we'll basically be judging how much I liked the book against how much I'm interested in reading the other book, and just kind of see, is this a favorite of mine that's going to go forward that I've read before, or am I more interested in the shiny new toy, so to speak. So that is basically how this is going to work, and we'll just scroll down and we can see the whole list. Going all the way up to 2024, starting in 2014, because that got me close to a 64 book bracket. So how did I order these books? Very simply, I went on Goodreads and I looked for each book how many ratings they had. I did this a while ago, so this won't match up to current Goodreads. And I sorted them by how many ratings they had. So the more popular books have higher seeds. And you can see all the way down to the least popular book, The Saint of Bright Doors, has 4,000 ratings. And Project Hail Mary is the runaway number one seed with 716,067 ratings. So that's pretty good. Pretty successful book there. Not surprising. It's a very popular book. And we're just going to kind of go through, and you can kind of see the seeding makes sense. You got the 32 versus 33 will go up against the one seed. Down at the bottom, we have the 22nd seed versus the 43rd seed going up against the 11th seed and the 54th seed. And we'll just kind of go through the bracket over a series of videos and see which of these books I'm either the most interested in reading or the most excited that I've already read. And we'll talk about that as we go. What I'll do for each book as we go through to sort of gauge how interesting the book seems is I've got all these Goodreads tabs open. One for we're doing the first 16 seeds today, 16 brackets today. So the first 32 brackets on this challenge, and we're just going to see which ones advance. I may have to split this into two videos. I think it'll be a longer one. And we'll use the Goodreads book descriptions to gauge interest. One thing is, because many of these books are sequels or third books or fourth books or fifth books, or in the case of Wheel of Time, like 14th books in a series, what we're going to do is just look at the first book in the series book description and just note that this is a later book in the series. But I don't want to do spoilers. I don't want to spoil myself. I don't want to spoil you guys for later books in a series. I don't want spoilers for the earlier books in the same series, so we're just going to gauge by the book one of the series in the description, and then from there we'll kind of go, am I interested in the series or not, and would I be interested in reading this deep into the series? Okay, so that's the basic summary of what we're doing. Let's dive in. I hope my little window isn't blocking your view too much. I'm not looking at the layout where I can see what's being blocked, so hopefully we won't be blocking anything important. All right, so our first matchup is our 32 seed versus our 33 seed. These are the average popularity books. We've got All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders. And we've got Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. Actually, Ancillary Mercy by Ann Leckie, which I believe is the third book in the series. I have actually read the first book of Imperial Ratch. I've not read the second and third books yet. So this will be a little bit of a... It's a matchup of two books I haven't read, but one I have a little bit more info than the others. So let's look at All the Birds in the Sky. Childhood friends Patricia Delphine, a witch, and Lawrence Armstead, a mad scientist, parted ways under mysterious circumstances during middle school. But as adults, they both wind up in near-future San Francisco, where Lawrence is an engineering genius, and Patricia works with a small band of other magicians to secretly repair the world's ever-growing ailments. But something is determined to bring them back together, to either save the world or end it. I'll say just immediate reaction to this. I think it sounds kind of interesting, but probably not my genre. So we'll see if we can beat it with Ancillary Mercy. But we're going to be reading the description for Ancillary Justice to avoid spoilers. On a remote, icy planet, the soldier known as Breck is drawing closer to completing her quest. Once, she was the Justice of Torin, a colossal starship with an artificial intelligence linking thousands of soldiers in the service of the Ratch, the empire that conquered the galaxy. Now, an act of treachery has ripped it all away, leaving her with one fragile human body, unanswered questions, and a burning desire for vengeance. Okay, so here's what I'll say. This description does not really do this series justice. I've read this book, and I know it's very interesting. It's one of my favorite series, just based on a one-book entry. And just going by the description, I don't know that this grabs me the way that I know the book itself grabs me. But I have that extra knowledge that I really like the series and I want to keep reading it. So with that knowledge and with the fact that All the Birds in the Sky sounds like a little bit not my genre, I am going to advance Ancillary Mercy. So we're going to report scores. We're going to give Ancillary Mercy 1 point, verify the winner, submit scores. It's going to go on and go up against Project Hail Mary in the second round. Okay, so let's close out of this window, and let's close out of this window, and let's close out of this window. All right, next we have Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher, which I think won that year, versus Space Opera by Catherine M. Valente. Valente? One of the two. Or something else. Apologies to anybody whose names I butcher. Nettle and Bone. After years of seeing her sisters suffer at the hands of an abusive prince, Mara, the shy, covenant-raised third-born daughter, has finally realized that no one is coming to their rescue. No one except for Mara herself. Seeking help from a powerful grave witch, Mara is offered the tools to kill a prince if she can complete 3 impossible tasks. But as is the way of tales and princes and witches and daughters, the impossible is only the beginning. On her quest, Mara is joined by the Grave Witch, a reluctant fairy godmother, a strapping former knight, and a chicken possessed by a demon. Together, the 5 of them intend to be the hand that closes around the throat of the prince and frees Mara's family and their kingdom from its tyrannous ruler at last. So my initial gut reaction, without reading the other one, is that sounds interesting. I also have heard a lot about T. Kingfisher and Nettle and Bone specifically, and it is a book that I am intrigued by. So this is pretty high on my intrigue level right off the bat. Then we'll look at Space Opera. In space, this is a long one. In space, everyone can hear you sing. A century ago, the Sentience Wars tore the galaxy apart and nearly ended the entire concept of intelligent spacefaring life. In the aftermath, a curious tradition was invented, something to cheer up everyone who was left and bring the shattered worlds together in the spirit of peace, unity, and understanding. Once every cycle, the civilizations gather for the Metagalactic Grand Prix. Part gladiatorial contest, part beauty pageant, part concert extravaganza, and part continuation of the wars of the past. Instead of competing in orbital combat, the powerful species that survive face off in a competition of song, dance, or whatever can be physically performed at an intergalactic talent show. The stakes are high for this new game, and everyone is forced to compete. This year, though, humankind has discovered the enormous universe, and while they are expected to discover a grand drama of diplomacy, gunships, wormholes, and stoic councils of aliens, they have instead found glitter, lipstick, and electric guitars. Mankind will not get to fight for its destiny, they must sing. A one-hit wonder band of human musicians, dancers, and roadies from London, Decibel Jones and the Absolute Zeros, have been chosen to represent Earth on the greatest stage in the galaxy, and the fate of their species lies in the ability to rock. I think I probably cut off my the bottom part of that with my window, so apologies for that. But again, I don't want to accidentally show anybody's names that didn't sign up to be in this video. So you'll just have to go with my audio description if I did cut off some of that text. My reaction to this, it sounds pretty fun. It sounds a little campy, a little silly, but so is like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and that's one of my favorite series of all time. So I'm interested in this too. This is a pretty tough matchup. Nettle and Bone, by the way, is the massive favorite. It is the 16th overall seed in this tournament. Space Opera is the 49th seed. So this would be quite the upset if I went with Space Opera. And I'm tempted to do so because it sounds very fun. But I've just heard so much about T. Kingfisher and Nettle and Bone. I think that is slightly edging me out here. This is a really close matchup. I could go either way on this one. But I think I'm going to give the slight edge to Nettle and Bone in a squeaker. Yeah, I feel good about that. Sorry, Space Opera. I want to read you too. All right, next we have Network Effect, which is a fifth book in a series of novellas. Network Effect, I believe, is a full novel. The other books in the series are novellas. I've actually read All Systems Red, but I hadn't continued with the series. This is part of the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells, and it is up against Parasite, part of the Parasitology series by Mira Grant, which I don't know much about. Okay, so I'm going to read the description of All Systems Red and then basically bases on, like, do I want to continue with this series having read this book already? As a heartless killing machine, I was a complete failure. In a corporate-dominated, spacefaring future, planetary missions must be approved and supplied by the company. For their own safety, exploratory teams are accompanied by company-supplied security androids. But in a society where contracts are awarded to the lowest bidder, safety isn't a primary concern. On a distant planet, a team of scientists is conducting surface tests, shadowed by their company-supplied droid, a self-aware sec unit that has hacked its own governing module and refers to itself, though never out loud, as Murderbot. Scornful of humans, Murderbot wants to be left alone. That's a typo, actually. Murderbot wants is to be left alone. Interesting typo on such a big book. Murderbot wants to be left alone long enough to figure out who it is, but when a neighboring mission goes dark, it's up to the scientists and Murderbot to get to the truth. Now, my take on this description is it does not really reflect the book. The book's very tongue-in-cheek and silly, and it is based on... the thing they leave out here is that Murderbot really wants to be left alone to watch telenovelas on cable, basically. Like, it just wants to watch a bunch of TV and not do anything, which is sort of the comedy of the series. And that is missing from this description. It feels like this description is trying to sell this to a more traditional sci-fi audience than it needed to, because Murderbot was a huge success as a series. People love this series. For me, I was lukewarm on All Systems Red. I was a little underwhelmed by it. I didn't quite vibe with the humor. I gave it 4 stars, so I didn't dislike it, but as you can kind of see on my review there. But yeah, it's not my favorite series ever. So this is a potential, do I want to keep reading this series? I'm not sure. Let's look at Parasite. Oops, I did scroll down too far. A decade in the future, humanity thrives in the absence of sickness and disease. We owe our good health to a humble parasite, a genetically engineered tapeworm developed by the pioneering Symbogen Corporation. When implanted, the tapeworm protects us from illness, boosts our immune system, even secretes designer drugs. It's been successful beyond the scientists' wildest dreams. Now, years on, almost every human being has a Symbogen tapeworm living within them. But these parasites are getting restless. They want their own lives and will do anything to get them. So my gut reaction to this is it sounds okay. It doesn't immediately hook me from the blurb, and I don't know anything else about this book. I think given that, and given that, I know Murderbot is at least a 4-star read for me. I'm going to say I got the effort of reading all the way to the 5th book of the series. Granted, they're novellas, so it's really more like reading 2 books. This is a tough one because Murderbot is beatable, but I'm not sure this Parasite book's description grabs me enough to actually beat it. Look, Moment of Truth. I think I'm a little more interested in Network Effect just because it is a more beloved series and I want to give it another chance. and Parasite I just have not heard of. The blurb doesn't do much to grab me. I think I'm going to move Network Effect on. Okay. This brings us to an interesting dilemma. We've got Gideon the Ninth, which is the book I'm reading at the moment, actually. I am in the middle of Gideon the Ninth. It's the first book in the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir. So that is an interesting one to give a reaction to. And it's up against Raven Stratagem, which I believe is book 2 in the Machineries of Empire. I've got the first book up here, Nine Fox Gambit by Yoon Ha Lee. So we're going to do that. Okay. The Emperor needs necromancers. The 9th necromancer needs a swordswoman. Gideon has a sword, some dirty magazines, and no more time for undead bullshit. Brought up by unfriendly, ossifying nuns, ancient retainers, and countless skeletons, Gideon is ready to abandon a life of servitude in an afterlife as a reanimated corpse. She packs up her sword, her shoes, and her dirty magazines, and prepares to launch her daring escape. But her childhood nemesis won't set her free without a service. Harrow Hark Nonagesimus, Reverend Daughter of the Ninth House and Bone Witch Extraordinaire, has been summoned into action. The Emperor has invited the heirs to each of his loyal houses to a deadly trial of wits and skill. If Harrow Hawk succeeds, she will become an immortal all-power servant of the resurrection, but no necromancer can ascend without their cavalier. Without Gideon's sword, Harrow will fall and the Ninth House will die. Of course, some things are better left dead. So far, this is a pretty good description, though. It kind of gives me some details that I'm a third of the way through the book and I don't know some of this stuff, so it's a little spoilery already. I'm enjoying Gideon the Ninth quite a bit. I'm really liking it. It's not like an all-time favorite, but it is a fun read for sure. It's up against Raven Stratagem, which is the second installment of this Machineries of Empires trilogy. I don't know much about this trilogy, so let's read about the first book, which is called Nine Fox Gambit. The first installment of the trilogy, Nine Fox Gambit, centers on disgraced Captain Kel Cheris, who must recapture the formidable fortress of Scattered Needles in order to redeem herself in front of the Hexarchate. To win an impossible war, Captain Kel Cheris must awaken an ancient weapon in a despised traitor general. Captain Kel Cheris, they are over-repeating the name Captain Kel Cheris in the first few sentences of this description, I will say. First note. Of the Hexarchate, is disgraced for using unconventional methods in a battle against heretics. Kel Command gives her the opportunity to redeem herself by retaking the Fortress of Scattered Needles, a star fortress that has recently been captured by heretics. They're repeating a lot of words. Heretics, Fortress of Scattered Needles, Captain Kel Cheris. This blurb needs a little line editing, I will say. Not going to reflect that on the book, but it is interesting. Cheris's career isn't the only thing at stake. If the fortress falls, the Hexarchate itself might be next. Cheris's best hope is to ally with the undead tactician Shuos Judeo. The good news is that Judeo has never lost a battle, and he may be the only one who can figure out how to successfully besiege the fortress. The bad news is that Judeo went mad in his first life and massacred 2 armies, one of them his own. As the siege wears on, Cheris must decide how far she can trust Judeo, because she might be his next victim. This sounds pretty cool. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff. It's got a good hook. But I don't want to just auto-advance books I've read, because that's no fun. That being said, I am really enjoying Gideon the Ninth, and I think the hook is a little better for this series. It's definitely a more popular series in the mainstream. I know Gideon the Ninth ranked very highly. It was like 20th on the Reddit best series of all time poll, whereas this other Machineries of War, is it Machineries of War? Yeah, Machineries of Empire series, I don't know if it rated on that list or not. It's an interesting question. So, though I feel guilty because I keep advancing books that I've already read, I'm enjoying Gideon the Ninth enough that I think I'm more interested in continuing to read Gideon the Ninth at this point than pick up this other series. So that's going to have to be that. Okay. Next, we've got the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi up against A Desolation Called Peace, which is the second book of the Teixkalan duology with a memory called Empire, which I have up here. Full disclosure, I've read A Memory Called Empire just a month or two ago, probably 2 months ago. I have not read Desolation Called Peace yet. So yet another one of these books where I've read the first book in the series and not kept going with it yet. I think it's like the fourth time that's happened already this video, which is interesting. Mostly I try to finish series that I pick up, but not always. Sometimes I sample. So let's... Scalzi, I have not really read. I've read a little bit of Old Man's War, but I kind of DNF'd it pretty quickly. Not because I wasn't digging it, but it wasn't grabbing me to the extent that I wanted to like keep reading it over some of the other stuff that I wanted to read. But I'm interested in Scalzi. Okay. Oh, trigger warning for COVID-19. When COVID-19 sweeps through New York City, Jamie Gray is stuck as a dead-end driver for food delivery apps. That is, until Jamie makes a delivery to an old acquaintance, Tom, who works at what he calls an animal rights organization. Tom's team needs a last-minute grunt to handle things on their next field visit. Jamie, eager to do anything, immediately signs on. What Tom doesn't tell Jamie is that the animals his team cares for are not here on Earth. Not our Earth, at least. In the alternate dimension, massive dinosaur-like creatures named kaiju roam a warm and human-free world. They're the universe's largest and most dangerous panda, and they're in trouble. It's not just the Kaiju Preservation Society that has found its way to the alternate world. Others have too, and their carelessness could cause millions back on our Earth to die. So my reaction to this blurb is kind of my reaction to a lot of John Scalzi, which is it sounds a little too high. Like it's in a weird gray area between like comedy and drama. And it doesn't quite grab me in either category. Like if it was just pure silliness, I'd be more interested. But it sounds, and it is sort of silly, but it also sounds like it's trying to be like serious in the silly category, and that vibe does not always grab me. So I'm a little unsure about the Kaiju Preservation Society. All right, now let's read A Memory Called Empires blurb. Ambassador Mahet Dzmare arrives in the center of the multi-system Teixkalani Empire, only to discover that her predecessor, the previous ambassador from their small but fiercely independent mining station, has died. But no one will admit that his death wasn't an accident, or that Mahit might be the next to die during a time of political instability in the highest echelons of the imperial court. Now Mahit must discover who is behind the murder, rescue herself, and save her station from Teixkalan's unceasing expansion, all while navigating an alien culture that is all too seductive, engaging in intrigues of her own, and hiding a deadly technological secret, one that might spell the end of her station and her way of life, or rescue it from annihilation. There's some subtle inaccuracies in that blurb, actually, but I'm not going to spoil what I think is not exactly what happens in the book. So this is book one. I've read this book. I liked it a lot. It's not an instant favorite, but it was one that I really enjoyed and was happy I read. And I want to keep reading this series, duology. There's really only one book left. So Desolation Called Peace is pretty high on my to-read list. And Kaiju Preservation Society just doesn't really grab me. So I'm going to continue the trend of advancing series that I've already read. Hopefully this trend does not last forever, because I think that would be boring. But for now, it turns out stuff that I've read that's nominated for Hugo Awards are pretty good and are pretty good at grabbing my attention. All right, moving on. This is a weird one. By the way, seeding-wise, Network Effect was a 17 seed against a 48 seed Parasite. Gideon the Ninth was an 8 seed against a 57 seed Raven Stratagem, and Kaiju was 25 against 40. So this is our first like real upset of the tournament. Desolation Called Peace is much lower red than Kaiju Preservation Society, so that's interesting. At least we have some upsets. Okay, the next matchup is weird. I don't know the story behind this because I wasn't really following the Hugos in 2014 or whenever this happened. But The Wheel of Time was nominated for a Hugo in one of these years. And The Wheel of Time is a 14-book series. Is that right? 14? Is it 12? I think it's 14. Yeah, 14-book series. I have read Wheel of Time. I've read the whole series except for the prologue. Not prologue, what is the word? The prequel book, New Spring. I have not read New Spring, but I've read the 14 main books. I don't know why. I think this was the year that A Memory Called Light, the final book in the series, came out. So I think it was probably like a real nomination for Memory of Light and like a retrospective appreciation of the Wheel of Time, which I don't think had been nominated up till that point, which is a little wild because it's the Wheel of Time. It's one of the premier fantasy series of all time. is what it is. I'm going to do The Eye of the World as the description and just sort of reflect on Wheel of Time in general and Memory of Light specifically and see how that goes. It's up against something called The Light Brigade by Cameron Hurley. I think I've got the right book here. Yes. Hopefully this is the right Light Brigade. If it's not, I apologize. I didn't scrub these as closely as I should, but I believe this is right. I don't know anything about the Light Brigade, so this will be interesting. Okay, The Eye of the World. You can see I gave it 4 stars. The wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth returns again. What was, what will be, and what is may yet fall under the shadow. Moraine Damadred arrives in Emmett's Field on a quest to find the one prophesied to stand against the Dark One, a malicious entity sowing the seeds of chaos and destruction. When a vicious band of half-men, half-beasts invade the village seeking their master's enemy, Moraine persuades Randall Thor and his friends to leave their home and enter a larger and unimaginable world filled with dangers waiting in the shadows and in the light. If I only had that description to go by, I would be pretty underwhelmed. That it sounds like the most generic fantasy book ever. Frankly, The Eye of the World is one of the most generic fantasy books ever. I gave it 4 stars. I didn't love it. It was very much a Tolkien retread. My overall take on the series is I'm glad I read it. It has some ups. It has some real downs. Memory Called Light, which is the book that came out this year, was my favorite in the series and one of my favorite books of all time. I think it ended on an incredibly high note. If I was just going off this description, I would be pretty underwhelmed. Not going to lie. Then we're up against the Light Brigade. The Light Brigade, it's what soldiers fighting the war against Mars call the ones who come back different. Grunts in the corporate cores get busted down into light to travel to and from interplanetary battlefronts. Everyone is changed by what the corps must do in order to break them down into light. Those who survive learn to stick to the mission brief no matter what actually happens during combat. Dietz, a fresh recruit in the infantry, begins to experience combat drops that don't sync up with the platoons. As Dietz's bad drops tell a story of the war that's not at all what the corporate brass want the soldier to think is going on. Is Dietz really experiencing the war differently, or is it combat madness? Trying to untangle memory from mission brief and survive with sanity attacked, Dietz is ready to become a hero or maybe a villain. In war, it's hard to tell the difference. I'm sort of a sucker for a good war sci-fi soldier book. I like that subgenre quite a bit. I'm trying to figure out how to treat Wheel of Time, because as a 14-book series, I like it. Memory of Light, I love it. That blurb I just read, not interested. So depending on how I treat Wheel of Time, this could go one of multiple ways. By the way, Wheel of Time is the 9 seed, so a very high seed in this tournament, versus 56 seed for the Light Brigade. I'm going to go based on the series as a whole, which I liked quite a bit, but has some real lows. I'm the intrigue of this soldier going to war and like finding out it's not what it seems. That is just such a hook that I love. I'm going to go Light Brigade. I'm going to do a big upset here. I'm a little surprised I'm going that way, but I'm interested in this Light Brigade book. I don't know anything about it. Okay. We've already read a memory called Empire, so we'll save some time. You know what that's all about. That's the first book in Texcalan by Arcady Martin. It is up against A Master of Jinn by P. Jelly Clark, part of the Dead Jinn universe. Cairo, 1912. Though Fatma El Sharawi, I probably butchered that, is the youngest woman working for the Ministry of Alchemy, Enchantments, and Supernatural Entities, she's certainly not a rookie, especially after preventing the destruction of the universe last summer. So when someone murders a secret brotherhood dedicated to one of the most famous men in history, Al-Jahiz, Agent Fatma is called onto the case. Al-Jahiz transformed the world 50 years ago when he opened up the veil between the magical and the mundane realms before vanishing into the unknown. This murderer claims to be Al-Jahiz, returned to condemn the modern age for its social oppressions. His dangerous magical abilities instigate unrest in the streets of Cairo that threaten to spill over onto the global stage. Alongside her ministry colleagues and her clever girlfriend City, Agent Fatma must unravel the mystery behind this imposter to restore peace to the city, or face the possibility he could be exactly who he seems. See, I love this description. I love this description. I like A Memory Called Empire a lot. Like, that was a really good book. I'm very intrigued by Master of Jin. I've actually purchased this book and not gotten around to read it, and maybe I should change that, because that was very, very up my alley. History, fantasy, murder mystery, secret brotherhood, like all sorts of stuff I like. I'm gonna advance Master Called Jin. Break the trend of just picking stuff I've already read. Master of Jin, not Master Called Jin. Right? Yeah, Master of Jin. Okay, let's move on to our 8th matchup. We've got the 5th season, our 4th seed in this tournament, against The Spare Man by Mary Robinette Kowal, which is a book in... Is it in the... No, it's by the author of The Calculating Stars. It's not part of The Calculating Stars. Okay, good. 5th season is the first book in the Broken Earth series by N.K. Jemisin. I have read 5th season. I've read this whole trilogy, actually. This is the way the world ends. Again. 3 terrible things happen in a single day. Essen, a woman living an ordinary life in a small town, comes home to find that her husband has brutally murdered their son and kidnapped their daughter. Meanwhile, mighty Sanzi, the world-spanning empire whose innovations have been civilization's bedrocks for 1,000 years, collapses as most of its citizens are murdered to serve a madman's vengeance. And worst of all, across the heart of the vast continent known as the Stillness, a great red rift has been torn into the heart of the earth, spewing ash enough to darken the sky for years, or centuries. Now Essen must pursue the wreckage of her family through a deadly dying land, without sunlight, clean water, or arable land, and with limited stockpiles of supplies. There will be war all across the Stillness, a battle royale of nations not for power or territory, but simply for the basic resources necessary to get through the long dark night. Esun does not care if the world falls apart around her. She'll break it herself if she must, to save her daughter. In general, the 5th season, great book. I gave it 4 stars. I think that's good. It's not quite a 5-star book, and I don't have 4.5 to give in the Goodreads scale. It is a high 4 stars. I like this book a lot. So The Spare Man's going to have to really wow me to beat it. Tesla Crane, a brilliant inventor and an heiress, is on her honeymoon on an interplanetary space liner cruising between the moon and Mars. She's traveling incognito and is reveling in her anonymity. Reading a lot is starting to make me trip over words. I apologize, guys. Then someone is murdered, and the festering chowderheads who run security have the audacity to arrest her spouse. Armed with banter martinis and her small service dog, Tesla is determined to solve the crime so that the newlyweds could get back to canoodling and keep the real killer from striking again. That sounds very generic. It's only a paragraph, so it's a little unfair, but that's not doing it for me. It is not going to pull the biggest upset of the tournament so far, which would be to knock off the 5th season. 5th season is definitely going to advance. Which makes sense. As 4th overall seed in a March Madness setting, this would be a 1 seed. So it makes sense that it goes forward. I think I'm going to pause the video here because I want to make sure it's recording. And this has already been going on quite a while. So I may split this into 4 videos for the first bracket. I'm not sure. We'll see how long this video actually turns out to be. So if this is the end of the video, thanks for watching. Hopefully you are enjoying this so far, and we will keep going.